Welcome, students. I'm super excited for you because you guys are going to enter into a learning network writing contest. Well, it's not actually a writing contest, it's more of a multimedia contest. More on that later. But nonetheless, you are going to enter a writing contest. All right, folks, let's go ahead and look at this and see what it is. This project is called Coming of Age in 2020, a special multimedia contest for teenagers in the United States. And it's an invitation to show the Learning Network in words or images, video or audio, how the events of this extraordinary year have affected you. Now, you're essentially going to answer one question. Here it is. It's a big question. What has 2020 been like for you? Okay, so this tumultuous year has changed all of us, but perhaps no generation has been more affected than yours. Teenagers are experiencing their formative years trapped inside and missing or reinventing milestones while a pandemic rages and economic collapse threatens. The craziest election year in decades is here. Schools as you once knew it has ceased to exist or changed dramatically, and civics lessons in books have changed to civics lessons in the streets. The New York Times Learning Network wants to hear about your experiences in whatever way you want to tell them, whether in words or images, audio or video. This is their first ever multimedia contest, and it is essentially a challenge to document what you're living through and express yourself creatively on any aspect, large or small, that you think is important or interesting. Okay, so maybe you've already have images on your camera roll that say something meaningful or poignant or funny or profound about your life this year. Or maybe you've kept a diary or a sketchbook or text or emails or handwritten letters that you can show what you've experienced. Or maybe you'd like to make something new, whether an essay, poem, song, cartoon, illustration, video, or podcast. The Learning Network is accepting nearly anything you can upload digitally that is your original work. No matter what format you choose, trust me, you've got something to say. Even if you don't think you have something to say, you do. These are stories that only you can tell. So, the Learning Network is aiming to create the richest possible portrait of what it's like to be a teenager in America in 2020. And to that end, they're going to need your help. They want to reach a young people in every corner of the country from a variety of backgrounds and communities and circumstances, including Northern Utah. And they're inviting them to add their points of view to a collective portrait of what happened this year and what it means. Okay, so what do you submit? I don't know. And that's the beauty about this. It's so open-ended. So here's something that one teenager submitted to the New York Times. So this is a journal entry by, it was submitted to the Audrey Museum by Tana Gibb, who came down with COVID-19 symptoms in early March. And she just took a picture of her journal and uploaded it here. So I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what they're looking for, and that's what makes this challenge super fun and super interesting. I hope you'll surprise me, and I think the Learning Networks hope you'll surprise them. It is safe to say that in all of their contests, they prize original work that has a strong voice and goes beyond the cliche to show or tell us something new. Now, but in the past, they've done like photo contest and traditional writing contest, but this year it's completely different. It's a multimedia project. So they'll be looking for tons of different types of entries. In their final collection, they'll be looking for two different types of things, like first draft things, for instance, writing of sketches or pandemic diaries, and then more like polished things, like essays that have gone through the several drafts. So you can choose something a little more crude or something a little more polished. It's completely up to you, but I really like this museum analogy here. In a sense, the New York Times Learning Network is doing just what museums are doing, and they're inviting you to act as um, field collectors for artifacts you've made this spring or summer that speak to our theme. So remember, like, we've all gone to a museum. We've all walked through the halls and looked at the exhibits, and we've seen different things. And we've got their pictures, and look, there are shoes up here and tons of other things back in the background over there. And that's what the New York Times Learning Network is looking for. And you are going to be the field collectors, and you are going to send in the artifacts. And the Learning Network is going to create or to curate a beautiful museum exhibit of what it's like to be a teenager in the year 2020. Okay. But they're also looking for a written aspect, a writer's statement. You know how when you go through the museum, there's always text or something on the wall that says, "Dear viewer, this is what I was trying to accomplish as the artist here, and this is what I was trying to do." So so in your writer's statement, we'll go more into those details later. They want to understand when, how, and why you created the piece you did and what it means to you. So the rules are going to be in Canvas. Click on the links at the top, scroll down, and you should see all of the rules. So whatever it is you choose to do, make sure you are following the rules. Okay, so let's continue on about more ideas about what you can submit. You can send in two works of the same. You can do one entry, you can do two. I don't care how many you do, but you can do up to two for this thing. So you can send something into the same genre, or you can mix and match. For instance, you might submit an essay, including a personal opinion or even informational essay, diary entries, poems, songs, or raps. Maybe you record it, or maybe you actually or you can just send in the lyrics, maybe an interview, or if you're a student journalist, reported stories, letters, email exchanges, text messages. I don't know, maybe you screenshot your text messages from what it's like to break up in COVID-19. I don't know. The possibilities are endless, but it's going to be fun. They can be letters, email exchanges, or text messages, photos, or GIFs. Maybe you've created a GIF or a meme about this, a comic or a political cartoon, a video. Maybe you started a TikTok channel and people have liked and subscribed to it during the year 2020. I feel like I butchered all of those terms. Maybe you created a podcast or a soundscape or a graph or chart or a map that you've made. You can submit anything that you can upload digitally as long as it's school appropriate. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but every year I have to say that. Okay. So, what should your topic be? Remember the big question. What's it like being a teenager in 2020? So, maybe you've spent most of this last several months at home and want to focus on some aspect of what that's been like. Or maybe the pandemic has had more of a direct impact on you or your community, whether because you or someone you know has gotten sick, or has been on the front lines as an essential worker, or has lost their job or home. Perhaps some part of who you are as a family member, friend, student, worker, member of a racial, religious, or ethnic group, athlete, artist, or anything else, maybe part of you has been challenged or changed by the upheaval this year. What can you tell us that others may not know or understand? Maybe you've been involved in the protests for racial justice and want to reflect on them via writing, video, political cartoons, or photos, or maybe you've been involved in the protest about Black Lives or Blue Lives Matter, or Black Lives Matter, or All Lives Matter. Or it could be that a community that you're part of has been directly affected by some issue that we'll be voting on in this election. I just cast my ballot yesterday. I was very tempted to vote for Kanye. but I didn't. So maybe you or your community has been affected by what we're voting on in 2020, or by a recent law or a Supreme Court decision. Or maybe you've lived in a place that's been hit by a wildfire, flood, hurricane, tornado, or some other natural event this year, and you'd like to express what it's been like. Last week when I was driving up from southern Utah, I looked to my right in Utah Valley and I noticed that Mount Temple was on fire. That was very, very hard for me. Finally, don't be afraid to tell what might feel like a very small story, since focusing on small moments often work better than trying to capture something enormous. Telling an engaging story about making brownies with your stepbrother can speak volumes about the experience of living in a blended family during quarantine. Okay, so the possibilities are endless. Now, I've got a few photographs that I'm going to show you, but before I do that, let me tell you what I like. If I were doing this, I would think to myself, well, what have I already done that I can repurpose, sorry, Mike, for this assignment? That way, all I have to do is look back and find something I've already done, already created, and then all I have to do is create a writer's statement for that. So I'm going to show you some of the photographs that I took during March, April, May, and a little bit later in this year, and I'll tell you a little bit about my COVID-19 experience. Okay, so these photographs, I took these photographs. Now, I'm going to get rid of my ugly face here in a moment, but I want to preface them with this. First off, these are my beginning attempts at landscape photography, so be kind, don't judge them too harshly. Secondly, when schools shut down in early March, I don't know about you, but I got depressed AF. I'm a grown man. I've got a career, a mortgage, a wife, 3 children, and I could hardly pull myself out of bed. Sometimes it was so bad, I was so depressed that I didn't get out of bed until like noon or 1 p.m. That's not good, folks. That's not good. So I had to do things to get me out of bed. So one of the things that I did was I got a state park pass, and I knew I had to get out of sight. If I didn't have plans, I wouldn't go, and I would just sit at home and be sad and mopey and depressed and angry with my family. So I made plans to go out, and one of those included getting a state park pass and then shooting landscape photography and wildlife photography at Antelope Island. Since March, I've been to Antelope Island about 20 times. So here are some of my landscape pictures that I took during lockdown. All right, so here's the first one. I like this one. You can kind of see this is early March. The snow is still there. You can see that little raven there. It was one of my first shots. It's not sharp. It's one of my first shots. I had a good subject, but didn't know how to quite control my camera yet. Here's another, check out that bison right there. He's up on a hill. He's looking at me. Funny story about this. My family was with me in the van. I pull over to the side of the road. I see like several bison. I climb on top of my car, and I get my 300 millimeter lens, and I'm zoomed up on this bison. Several cars behind me have stopped. We're all photographing this bison. And then like 7, 8 cars behind us, a guy stops in his minivan, honks his horn and says, "Get off your car, stop taking pictures and drive. This is a road, not a zoo." So I was like, dude, you're a jerk. So I was shooting a bison right here, and I took my camera, zoomed in, took his picture, waved, and said, "I'll put that on Facebook later." I didn't, but it totally diffused the situation. He drove around upset. It was kind of fun. All right, check out this shot of this bison that I got. I may have gotten a little bit close, but it was totally worth it. Later on, I got this shot of this bison here, Ferrari Peak. Oh, this like just captures Antelope Island beautifully. Fan of that one. Check out all these birds. I don't want to tell you that I threw a rock, not at the birds, but near them in order to get them all to fly. I don't know if it was unethical or not, but no one was harmed in the making of this photo. Okay, and then look at this little pronghorn. He's so cute. He's saying hi to me. This pronghorn actually just kept walking closer and closer and closer to me, and he was, or she was like, photograph me like one of your French pronghorns. That's a little, sorry, Titanic reference, 90s millennial joke. Anyway, totally came up here and was like, take my picture. And I was like, absolutely, old sport. I'll take your photograph. Okay, we've got another one. This was during the windstorms, the dramatic skies. Oh man, whew, that was a fun picture to take. And this is just a generic landscape portrait, but I love the S curve of this road right here. And then this is actually one of my favorite photographs that I took. This is early April. We go out and we just walk down to the beach at Antelope Island with my family, my wife, and my kids are there. And all I did was say, kids, go out on that little peninsula-looking sandbar and just do whatever it is you do. And I was able to capture this photograph. Oh, and I love the composition, the silhouette, they're backlit, the mirrored lake. That rarely happens on Antelope Island. There's so much wind out there, you rarely get a flat. Oh man, so I took this photograph. I was so excited with it. I brought it home. I put it into Lightroom. I edited it. I printed it, and now it's actually above my mantle. It was fun. So what I would have to do with these photographs is, through my writer's statement, I would have to connect. Like, what does this bison have to do with 2020? I'd have to make that connection in my artist statement. So if I had to write my artist statement, I believe all you get is 450 words or fewer. I would explain that during the early part of COVID-19 and the lockdowns, or the soft lockdowns, or school soft closures, I found myself incredibly unmotivated and depressed and sad. So I didn't even want to do the things that I love doing. So I forced myself to make plans and to go do something for my mental health. And then I started photographing Antelope Island. Now, the other thing is that I would include in my writer's statement, I had lots of plans this year. I was going to go to New York City. I was going to go to California. I was going to go canyoneering all over Utah. But none of those plans really came to fruition because of COVID. And instead, I was stuck, like all of us, close to home. I would have never discovered the beauty of Antelope Island had COVID-19 not happened. I'd have gotten out of town. And the thing about Antelope Island is that, like, I've always known about it. I've been there in the past. It smells, it has lots of bugs, and it's not a very pleasant place unless you fall in love with it and you can see past that. Because of COVID-19, I found the beauty. I discovered the beauty that had been around me for the last 10 years of my life that I never took the time to see. So I can submit that. That's what one thing I would submit. Another photograph that I'm going to show you. This one's a little bit personal, but I'm going to show you anyway, not asking for sympathy. I'm just going to show you this. My grandfather passed away, not because of COVID, but during COVID. And I had the opportunity and the privilege to photograph the unconventional funeral that we had for my grandfather in Southern California. So here is the photograph that I took. This is of my uncle saying his last goodbyes to his father during the pandemic. Oh man, and I love this shot. It's powerful. It speaks volumes to what it means to mourn during COVID-19. My uncle has the mask saying goodbye. And it's actually my photograph that I've taken this year. In my artist statement, I would explain what was going on. I explained the story of my grandfather's passing, how I got this photograph, and what this photograph means to me. Okay, so folks, what are you going to do for this assignment? So let's go into Canvas. In Canvas, we're looking at this right here. I've got all of the links that you're going to need. If you click on this link right up here and you start scrolling through it, you'll notice where I ripped off all of my monologue. I probably got it from here. Thanks, Learning Network. Scroll down, read through all of this. And make sure you know the rules. Whatever you send, it must be related to 2020. I'll go over them quickly. It could be funny or sad, raw or polished. Focus on a tiny event last April or an entire global movement. You can submit up to 2 pieces. For each individual submission, you must fill out an artist statement. You can work alone or with others or do both. Now, many of my students, you can work with any of my students in any of my classes. All of my juniors are doing this. The ones who are in class and the ones who are at home. Oh, I forgot. You guys have probably been missing my face. I'm back. Okay. So you can work alone or with others. The writing you send, regardless of genre, must be no more than 450 words. So that's if you're doing an essay. So the artist statement might be actually a little bit shorter. I'll have to look more into that. Videos and audio recordings can be no longer than 2 minutes. Photographs should be no larger than 10 megabytes. You cannot submit anything that you have already published anywhere else. The contest is open up to any, like, as long as you live in the United States, you're good. And then there's that. Okay, so make sure you understand the rules. Next part, let's go into model text. If you don't know what to submit, I highly encourage you to look through this. Now, these model texts, if you click on this, it might be somewhat overwhelming. These are not necessarily teenagers for this, but you scroll through this, okay? Plenty of ideas that you can look at right here, okay? Plenty of different things. So look at all of those. Click on some of these, all right? So essays and poetry by young people, click on some of those. If you want to write an essay, see what other people have done for essays. These are work by adults. Humor, poetry, if you want to do poetry, you can check some of this out. If you want to do a list or other things, you can check out these lists right here. If you want to do photos, tons of photos right there. Illustrations, you can do illustrations. Whatever you want. Videos, keep in mind your videos can be no longer than 2 minutes. Whatever it is you want. Same with podcasts. So check those out. So the big question, what do you submit for this assignment? You are going to submit proof that you have brainstormed for this. This is due Friday at midnight. So let's go back into here, and you are going to create a Google Doc or a Word doc, or you can just use a text entry box and just tell me how you have been thinking about this. So I've got 6 things you can do. You can mix and match. You can do whatever it is you want for this, but prove to me you've done some brainstorming. So I adapted all this from the Learning Network. So maybe you consider the artifacts you already have. So think about what you've already done. You don't necessarily have to create something new. Think about what you've already done. Go through your phone. Look at your photos. Think about the last thing, whether it's photos or journal entries or sketches or social media posts or texts or emails or videos. Look through everything you've done. Okay, look through everything you've done. Another thing that you could do is go back through everything you've made or collected and consider what it says. You may have more than you realize, so take some inventory on what you've made this year, even if you never imagined it can be something meaningful. Images, journals, social media posts. I feel like that was redundant. Sorry about that. Or you can make a timeline. Make a timeline. You can divide your timeline into months or draw a line and label one side January 2020 and the other now, and then fill it in. Push yourself. Maybe put 20 things that happened in there. Do you remember back in holy cow. January felt like 5 years ago. So you can do that. You can respond to these sentence starters, get the ideas flowing. This year has been blank because what I'll always remember about 2020 is some images that will stay with me from this year are what people don't understand about my life this year is. Okay, so consider one of those 4 following ways to start brainstorming. Another thing you can do. Oh, the sun's coming in and it's messing up the lighting in my room. It's not messy, it's changing it. Okay, so there are other things you can do. So decide what you want to submit. Okay, here are some things you can think about. Do you want to send something you've already created? Do you want to use the work you already have, but edit or improve it or update it? Do you want to make something entirely new? Don't worry if your idea isn't dramatic or big or serious. Sometimes small or simple or funny works better. And then start playing around with medium and genre and start thinking about what you want to do. Ask yourselves which of these mediums or genre is most natural to me, which might be more challenging in a good way or a bad way, which might be especially interesting or fun to experiment with. Or are there anything else I can do and collaborate with a partner since this contest allows groups? Which might be the most conducive to what I want to say? Okay, so folks, your brainstorm is due Friday. It's due Friday at midnight. Prove to me that you've thought about this. Prove to me that you're thinking about what you want to do. Make some plans. Now, the contest is when is it due? It's over November 12th, I believe. So you have to have everything, your real thing submitted by November 12th. So we've got a few weeks until the contest ends, but we're going to start thinking about it now. Okay, folks, contact me if you have any questions. As always, this is Mr. Bockel. Keep reading, keep learning.